I love air plants, and so does today's grower. We're going to venture outside of the Grow Paradise Nursery to go and visit Michael Randall, the owner of Misfit Plants, a nursery that specialises in weird and wonderful plants. Now he's going to show us around one of his greenhouses, which is looking amazing for the time of year. It's home to some tiny flowering orchids, to some of the largest growing air plants, as well as carnivorous plants. And I think he said he's got Carnivorous Bromeliads, which is something that is completely new to me. So come and join me on this look around Michael Randall's greenhouse at Misfit Plants. I found him. Hello, Michael. How are you doing?
Not too bad, and you? How's you?
I'm good. Your greenhouse is looking absolutely chock-a-block. Do you want to show us around some of the highlights at this time of year?
Well, bromeliads are mostly foliage and light, but there's a few orchids in flower, quite a few miniatures, like lovely little dendroculums.
Let's have a look. That's really nice.
There's quite a few dendroculums are scented. Depends on the time of day, depending on what they're pollinated by.
Is orchids something that you're particularly into? I can see you've got a few growing around the space.
Yeah, I like orchids, predominantly miniatures, because as you can probably tell, space is a premium or a luxury for myself. But miniatures, I just love looking at plants and seeing small details, and you have to actually stop and look at them rather than just a glance and like, oh, it's in flower, move on to the next one. But the little ones, you just need to look for the small flowers. Like the Restiprias, lovely little dancing flowers, a South American miniature.
Very, very nice. And there's quite a lot of colour variance in the flowers as well.
And you can hybridize them. There's been a few attempts to do it sort of domestically or sort of at a hobbyist level to do it, but it is an absolute art to grow them from seed. So the easiest thing with Restiprias is they produce pups sometimes on their axils.
Yeah.
And then you propagate them from those.
Oh, yeah.
It's a much longer process, but it's a bit more of a, well, it's a confirmed process because you know you're going to get the exact same
A
flowering.
clone of the parent plant.
Yeah.
Okay.
But other than orchids, I just love the weirds and the wonderfuls, hence
Misfit Plants. Yep.
And in here, I keep it as a cool, heated greenhouse. So I predominantly grow, as I said, cool orchids, cool growing orchids, which is about a minimum of 10 to 12 Celsius with good humidity.
Yep.
So hence why most of the orchids here are in a sphagnum moss, orchid bark mix, depending on the variety. Some have mounted, some grow naturally terrestrially. But most of the South American ones grow on branches or low tree bases.
Yeah.
So they just grow in little moss mounds and they grow like that. But
I guess any leaf litter that falls from the canopy is just going to collect around the roots and they'll sort of anchor into that.
And they anchor into that. It's like some of the more warmer growing orchids, the Stanhopias, will actually grow up on branches, but then they'll have a particular set of roots which grow up into the air, act like fingers to catch falling debris, a bit like staghorn ferns. They do the same thing with their shield fronds. And they'll produce like an urn and a funnel to catch any falling debris.
Okay, and that's where they'll get their nutrients. That's very, very smart.
But then there's other plants in here which I grow which catch their own nutrients in the form of insects. So the Nepenthes.
Oh yeah, an iconic carnivorous plant. That's a really nice form. Which one's that?
This is a hybrid between truncata and another hybrid, which I can never pronounce, so I'm not going to even try. Joys of being dyslexic. Pronouncing Latin names is a pain.
Yeah, Latin's hard enough for anybody. But
Don't. And everyone seems to have an opinion on it. It's like some wonderful books actually produce a phonetic way of being able to describe the actual names, a phonetic description of the plant. So instead of reading it one way, it could be Nepenthes, which is these. Then you get some of the orchids like Pleurophthalus, family, and slipper orchids. That's a Fragilopedium, I think.
Yeah, it's helpful to know how they're
Yeah.
pronounced.
Yeah. I watered in here last night, so everything's covered in a bit of water.
That's okay.
So I have a little miniature. Well, it's not a miniature. Well, it is a small growing slipper orchid. Yet again, a South American hybrid. But yeah, the Nepenthes, I grow the highland varieties because they're not quite so demanding on a temperature regularity. In other words, they don't have to have a really high temperature during the day, then a slight temperature drop at night. Because where they come from, Borneo, Malaysia, Indonesian way, these are highland ones, so these grow top of the mountains or close to the tops.
Yep.
And so they like good humidity, a temperature drop at night, but can tolerate a cooler daytime temperature.
Okay, so if anyone's looking to try some perhaps outside in the warmer summer months, go for the highland varieties?
Yeah, stick them in more of a shady area because they adore humidity. The more humidity they get, the bigger the traps can get, depending on this variety. So that's Avicii, which is a great species, and it's hairy. And you get different forms, but it's quite a robust one.
Yeah.
Even some of the ones you get from the garden centres, you can grow them outside over a pond during the summer months. And a friend of mine who has a nursery up near Glastonbury, he's actually caught a blue tit in a Nepenthes trap by accident.
Okay, I can imagine the smell was horrendous.
I've caught mice in these traps.
Okay.
And it took me a while to work out where it was coming from because it was sort of like, it's one of those things, if you have a pet cat, you come into a room like, okay, where is it? What's been left hidden or the like? So it took me a while to find it, and I found a mouse in one of the traps, that being one of this one's traps.
And did you leave it to do its thing?
I left it, and it's just too rich for the plant because the plant is designed to catch invertebrates on a small scale.
Yeah.
While some Nepenthes, especially Lowii, actually have a relationship with birds and shrews where it produces a waxy substance on the lid. And it actually is a diuretic, so the lid would recurve back all the way and produce a very waxy, high protein, sugar-rich substance.
Yeah.
And the mammal would eat it, then defecate into the trap, and that's where the plant gets its essentially nutrients from, because all carnivorous plants essentially grow or evolved in an environment where it's very nutrient poor.
Which is why they developed that feature.
Yes,
that makes
sense. Because they can photosynthesize, produce their own sugars, they can absorb water, but then they have no vitamins, minerals to be actually utilize any of it to create more structure and the like.
Okay.
And it's like with bromeliads, there's a few pseudo-carnivorous bromeliads like Catopsis and Borchenia, which are passive. In other words, if something falls in, they'll digest it and then absorb it.
Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
It's like, got a few over there.
You can go and have a look.
So the Catopsis grows on branches of trees, only uses its roots to hang on, like tillandsias do. They only use them for anchorage.
Yep.
They do produce them, but they don't draw any nutrients through them.
Where do tillandsia get their nutrients?
They absorb it all through their leaves. Same process as the carnivorous, really. They absorb it through their leaves. They have modified stoma that then, when they feel it is right or need to, they absorb the nutrients or the water. And if you look underneath, look at them underneath a microscope, you see it's actually a disc with a little hair on it.
Okay.
It sits above/over a pore, or trichome, which is its Latin name, or the stoma, which is what it covers. And it absorbs the water through that. And the more hairy they are, the more, got truncata over there, which is not truncata tectorum, which is a much fluffier one. So you see, so if I bring it down for you. And that's
I'm mastering the art of walking backwards in a dense greenhouse here.
Yes, chaos. So this one's really fluffy, and this will grow on rock faces or on cacti or on tree branches in the Argentinian coast, everywhere from Ecuador, basically Latin America. It's a very widespread species, but it's also a very variable species. You can get compact forms, elongated forms. which they're all called Tectorum, but there hasn't been the study of them quite so much to reclassify them or put them in their own little brackets,
Yeah.
subspecies.
But I guess all of those forms and variants and how kind of spread out it is a testament to its success being a fluffier form, being able
And
to survive drier
obviously
conditions.
one form blew in because they're all windblown like a dandelion. So they have a little seed with like silk on the end. Got various flowers that have opened or seed pods that have opened. And they get windblown, so one seed of one variety may blow into another valley and create basically its own subspecies through just, if this adaptation works, then it continues down the line, then it becomes a slightly different variety. It's like with another one with tillandsias is Ioniantha. There are so many different varieties and forms. It's one of the other things I love about weird plants. Within one family, the tillandsias, sarracenias, orchids, there can be such a variety, and that's one of the things I like.
Yeah.
And it's just so interesting. But going back to the Carnivorous Bromeliads, so this is a bit stretched, but this is Brocenia tatii, and this comes from the flat mountains in Venezuela and the like, the tepuis. And so this will just go up and up and up, and it will get very wide, very tall. It'll fall over, then just keep growing. And I've had friends go to these mountains and see them, and they grow up like 10 or so feet.
Yeah.
And that's a passive carnivorous or
So
pseudo.
whereabouts would the insects fall?
They would fall in the top, and it has a reservoir of water, which nearly all bromeliads have, because they have this spiral leaf pattern.
Yeah.
And so they have tanks of water in the top. And insect larvae would be hatching and growing inside of there. It would absorb their nutrients from their feces or the detritus. Things may fall in there and die, then absorb that. It can be its own ecosystem. It's like dart frogs need, well, particular species of dart frogs need bromeliads to rear their young in, and they'll actually move them from plant to plant.
They lay
on...
one tadpole per bromeliad. Yeah. Seen it on an Attenborough documentary.
Oh, it's amazing. And the little frog is only an inch big, if that.
Yeah.
And you see them go up these trees from one bromeliad down to another and up with its tadpole on the back of its back,
cool.
and just you think this tiny little thing needs a plant, but it has to go from that tree to that tree, then possibly down to that tree to do it. But with this is another one. This is a catopsis, so it only really uses its roots to hang on. So I just keep them in orchid bark just to give them something to root into.
Okay.
And it just catches debris, anything falls into it.
So you could grow this as a epiphyte. Outdoors on a branch in warmer conditions, or if you've got a greenhouse, create like a rainforest canopy display of bromeliads.
You can use this species or variety is best done with either fishing line or wire it to a branch. It will root on, and you can move it from A to B. You can do that with most epiphytes or epiphytic bromeliads. You can use, because where they only use their roots for anchorage, same with the tillandsias, you can use a hot glue gun on a cool setting, do a dab of the hot glue, let it cool for 10 to 30 seconds, then place the air plant on it, then move it from where you want it to go, and leave it as is, really.
Yeah.
And they can go, like all these air plants go out in the summer months. So they get the rain. If we get hot, dry spells, I make sure there's a bit of shade over them. And water them in the evenings, because then they have the whole night to absorb the water through. And one of the keys with air plants is rainwater. They hate tap water. They'll tolerate it over a time. But where the calcium molecules, because in the UK we have hard water in a lot of places, the calcium molecules are actually so big it blocks the pores. So it's a bit like us trying to have a drink with a cricket ball in our mouth. It doesn't work. We get a bit, but not much.
That's a good way of putting it.
Well, it's one of those things that make me a bit different. I think of things to make a bit more visually easier to understand.
I've read online a lot of people say that air plants will die if they come into contact with metal. Is that something that you found to be true?
I haven't found it to be true, because as you can see, I've got metal all over the place, because it's a Dutch-like glass house, so I've got metal holding the frame up, and I don't think it's sort of like they touch it, they die. I think it's more if it's an oxidized metal that gets into their system that might cause them to be weaker or just break down their cells.
Yeah.
But personally, I haven't found, I don't hot glue them or attach them to metal, but I know I've seen pictures and read things online where they've actually naturally attached themselves to power lines.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of that.
Pylons get absolutely overgrown with bromeliads. I think it's more of the oxidized metal that gets into their system that might upset them. It might be a particular metal. I'm not an expert. I just grow and it's all trial and error.
I wonder if sometimes where people are finding it's tied here, it's actually just a lack of airflow and where the ends have been compressed, but the rest of the plant's perfectly healthy and happily grows away.
It is probably where they get wired up and it's just crushed. So as long as the growth point at the base is fine, that'll keep growing. But then that's how, especially Eucyonoides, would grow in the wild. It would just continually grow at it where it first attached to the plant as a seedling or a bit that fell off the plant higher up. It may attach but then die because it's either too wet or just old. It's a lot like bromeliads. They'll, granted they are bromeliad, but it's a lot like the traditional bromeliads, the urn ones. They'll have the urn, the mother plant, branch off, then behind will die, but it'll keep its structure and it'll just sort of form its own skeleton and live off that.
Yeah.
It's a bit like tree ferns. They create their own stump.
Yes,
and
yeah,
go
very
up.
true.
And it just depends on the individual species. Some species of air plants like to be mounted, hung up on wire. Some are a bit more terrestrial. Some grow on rock faces. A good way is to look up where they naturally come from and just learn the basics like, right, it's with all plants. Learn where they naturally come from. Right, this could be, these are South American. They come from Latin America to southern states of North America. And they grow on trees, they grow on rock faces, pylons, people's houses. And the main common thing is high humidity and high rainfall, but then with dry periods in between in the day.
Yeah.
And it's like people say, oh, I keep my air plant in the bathroom, but it keeps dying. Well, where they come from, they have humidity of 80 to 90% for 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
You're not having a shower for 12 hours a day. If you are, I'm not paying your bill.
Yeah. And airflow, I guess, in a bathroom, you're not going to get a nice breeze blowing through it.
And so, yeah, they don't get that high humidity, concentrated humidity for X amount of hours a day. And so they don't naturally they'll struggle on and continue for a year or so, but ultimately they need more water. So you can literally just take them off, dunk them in a water butt or a pond, as long as it's fresh water, and clean fresh water, dunk it in and hang it back up.
Yeah.
The more urn-like ones will keep little pockets of water in the top. They'll absorb them through the top, absorb them over time. But then the more fluffier ones will absorb it very quickly, then dry out. You don't want them to sit in the wet. That's why they're all epiphytes, because they just keep absorbing and then rot. Another thing with bromeliads, some do need to be potted, but only just for something for you to hold on to.
Well, I love the colours on this one.
I think it's Norgelia Comet.
Okay.
And it's raining. Fine British weather. But yeah, it's only in the pot for give me something to hold on to, essentially.
And I guess that's what you mean about these kind of urn-shaped bromeliads send out pups sideways.
Yeah, it's like that one's bringing it in on itself, but you can see here it has produced roots, but only to sort of anchor it to something.
Oh yeah.
And you can see there, that's one of the original first to second pups that was produced from the main plant that was there. And that bit's still alive, but it's just used as sort of a highway for energy to move from one urn to another, and as an anchorage point.
Okay, I've seen these growing in Kew in the Prince of Wales Conservatory. They've got them growing almost as chandeliers because they've just let them produce offset after offset, and it's hanging down about a metre long, and it looks so good.
There's another little one just by the Orchids that have done the same thing. This is another Norgelia, and that was originally attached to a bit of coconut with fishing line.
Hang on.
Yes.
Genuinely in the jungle. Hang on. I will come around this way. There we go.
So, and it will just grow out. Then naturally, this is a cultivar, but its wild ancestor or species, it would either find a neighbouring branch or just a neighbouring plant and root on.
Yep.
But you can see how.
It's almost scrambling
Yeah.
its way through the canopy.
But then each bromeliad has its own way of doing things. Same with orchids. It just depends on its niche, its habits.
What have you got that growing in? Is it a half coconut shell?
Yeah, it's just a half coconut shell. Got it from the supermarket.
With some
Ate the inside.
sphagnum moss?
Yeah. But then they don't need the sphagnum moss, really. You can just give them the coconut shell.
That's a really nice way of doing it. I might have to give that a go.
Oh, it's very easy. And then just leave it. This is about 5, 6 years old, if not more. Then it's got its own little miniature tillandsia, which is self-seed, tricholepsis, inside. And that's just a
wow.
self-seed.
Okay. I imagine the seeds of tillandsia are tiny, dust-like.
Yes, I've got a few over here. Where's a good... This is prunosa. And so that is, well, that there is just 2 seeds with its fluff.
How weird. It's
And they
definitely evolved to be carried by wind then.
Yep, and they'll just float around. Some species are more better from germinating from seed than others. Prunosa can be a bit iffy, but then you get tricholepsis, which gets everywhere, and that will grow on its own seed pods where it
Oh yeah.
came from.
Do you grow a lot of air plants from seed yourself?
I do, but mainly as sort of, I wonder how this long takes or how long I can keep it to flowers and that sort of thing, because they take so long from seed.
Yeah, I can imagine. They don't look like something that's going to grow particularly
No,
fast.
it's like these seedlings are about 6 years old.
Okay, just sewn onto, is that felt?
That's just capillary matting, just small
Okay.
capillary matting, and you can see how they will just root on.
Yeah.
And it's just there for anchorage.
And so you've just put the seed into the capillary
I just
matting.
rubbed it like that and kept it wet, and they rooted on.
Very cool.
Cobwebs.
Cobweb or seed, it's a good game.
It's probably 50-50. And that's how they would naturally grow, essentially. They would find a face, get wet, and root on it. But main way that tillandsias are propagated is through division. Some will only produce 1 or 2 pups each time after they've flowered, and the like. So, where's a good one? This is Tectorum blue flower. So it's got some lovely blue flowers. And you can see it's come along. This is the original plant, as you can tell.
Yeah.
And it's flowered and branched out. And you can see seedlings of various other things growing on there.
Yeah.
But some species grow very quickly.
Love the colour of the flowers on that as well.
And the flowers range in colours, but they're all that simple 3-petal tubular shape.
Oh yeah.
Some are scented, and some just are, well, some are scented through, because they're attracting moths and the like to be pollinated by. But then you get ones that form clumps. This is one of my absolute favourites. This is Funkinea.
Great name.
And it has a lovely red flower, and the tips will flush a pink. So you can see remnants of pink on there where it flowered. And it just continued on.
Is that one plant or is that?
It essentially was one plant, but it's just grown out. It's divided, but it's rooted into its old plant frame.
That's a really nice structure. It's definitely an eye-catching plant. Maybe literally if you get too close.
Well, actually, it's not too bad.
No?
It's frilly rather than anything else.
What got you into air plants?
Air plants, like all plants, really, the weirder the better in some way. I like, a bit like myself, I like oddities.
Yep.
And as I said, I love the variation within one family. It's like I've got one of the biggest tillandsias over there, which I'll show you in a minute, depending on how you want to cut it. But then this is one of the smallest. This is an adult flowering size tillandsia bryoides.
So this is adult sized,
This
same
is
family as that huge plant you've just shown us?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's, and it's flowering and it's an adult size and it grows on the briars in South America. Nearly all tillandsias and bromeliads come from Latin America. And so it's a big family, and before the intercontinental exchange between North and Southern America, they only stayed within Latin America essentially. There were a few ancestors or cousins dotted around the world, but their stronghold was South America. And they've just had so many million years to divide off and just find their own little niche or adapt to their own little niche in wherever they found themselves.
Yeah.
And the biggest one, which is, these are still young plants. If it hasn't attached itself, this is Secunda. And this has a funny habit of when it flowers, so this is still a juvenile plant,
Wow, okay.
and when it flowers, which is a great big long flower spike, it will flower little black tubular flowers, but then it will produce pups along its flower spike, which can go up about 5-6 feet. And it'll grow pups all along it, then it will fall over in its natural environment, and they would grow and create like a strawberry domino effect.
Yep.
But it's just the variety and the sheer difference between one individual of the same family and the other.
That's impressive. It's just mad to think these are all in the same family.
Yeah, same family
Absolutely
as
mad.
the pineapple. I think they're distant cousins to agaves, which means they're also distant cousins to lilies.
Okay.
Because agaves, if I remember correctly, are liliaceae in one of their branch backs. I might be completely wrong, but it's just, you can sometimes see the structure, especially with agaves as well. They've got the 3 petals, long flower spikes, similar growth habit, but just different structure in a way.
Yeah. It's hard, isn't it? Once you start getting into a particular genus of plants, it's hard to not get the bug of collecting them all.
Yes, it's why this is just one glass house of 2 that I've got, plus a conservatory and a polytunnel.
Yeah, okay.
All have got their own interesting weirds and wonderfuls in them.
Maybe we'll be back later in the year to film the other plant collection.
If you're really unlucky. Pop that there and knock everything down in transit. But then you can get hybrids. This is Tillandsia Kimberley. So it looks very much like Eucenoides, which is one of its parent plants.
Yeah.
And it's got another one, which I think is Cochita, which is another yellow flowered one. And it's a lot more compact and free branching. So you can see that's just one stem, essentially.
Yeah.
Then within normal Eucenoides, it's very much more open and loose.
Yeah.
So you can get hybrids, but again, growing things from seed takes such a long time with the air plants. Hence why, on a commercial basis, they would either divide them or they do, I think it's micro-propagation, where they basically put them in a blender, put them on an agar, then hope we get like crests come up.
Yeah.
But it's like, again, with the orchids, you get so many different varieties. Like this is Bulbophyllum falcatum. And the flowers have little landing pads for insects with pollinate that move around. So
Wow.
and you get slipper orchids. I think this is living fire, but I'm not 100% sure. But either way, this is the first time I've had it flower for me.
And how long have you been growing this one for?
I grew it as a little plug, essentially, for about 4 years.
Okay, so patience pays off.
Yes, and again, they're another South American one, so I try and grow plants that suit with other plants. I don't cater for one particular plant. I cater for one particular sort of growing environment,
Okay.
like the nepenthes, the orchids.
I guess that works. If you're growing in a space like this, you're going to find as many types of plants that you
Yeah.
can that fit in this light level, this humidity level, and the temperature that you're keeping it at.
And it's, as with everything, it's all trial and error. If it doesn't work, try it a different way. If it really doesn't work, move on to the next thing that could be better, could be worse, or could be just as good.
Go on then, spill the beans. What's a plant that you've tried over and over and just can't seem to get to work? We've all got one.
It's hard to think really, because where I've got so many, is like you seem to forget, you block out the bad stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I don't want to relive it.
Yeah.
Just having a look at what I've got to see what does bug me or what does sort of...
I mean, everything looks healthy that you've got here, so maybe you don't have quite as much as a struggle as I do. I mean, stag's horn ferns is something that I have struggled with, and I know so many people don't have any issue growing them.
I have issues. I just managed to sow and grow it from seeds so easily. So this is various species, but I think most of them are actually Superbium, with my adult plant down in the conservatory, which is on a south-facing stone wall, which I abuse, essentially.
Yeah.
But I grow it from spore.
Okay.
And so it produces its own spore. And so I've got a store of plants just in case that one dies.
Yeah.
But you can keep the store for quite a long time. But most of the time, it is patience with anything. Patience is a virtue.
Yeah.
I might not have the funds or the space, but essentially I've got time.
Yeah.
So these were all reared in Chinese takeaway containers or just clear plastic containers on peat.
Okay.
They're kept damp and they grow at their own rate. If they start producing sort of more of an adult leaf from their own little filmy leaf or a young juvenile leaf, which are minuscule, I then prick them out, then grow from there. It's like some in there are happy, some are definitely not, some have gone backwards. It's all trial and error.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the bad plants that
I put you on the spot a bit there.
You have. I would say actually the ones I do struggle with can be some of the more tropical aeroids. So, what's Pharaoh's mask family?
Colocasia.
Colocasias. I do have trouble with colocasias.
Yeah.
Sometimes I get it right, sometimes I don't. The aerums are a very big family anyway.
Yeah, I struggle with Colocasia through winter.
Yeah.
Really struggle.
The arum family, where it is so diverse, you can sort of make up for one while struggle with the other.
Yeah.
My baby Titanum, Amorphophallus, not Amorphophallus, it is Amorphophallus?
Not sure.
Amorphophallus titanum. Anyway, it's one of the biggest flowering plants in the world. And with trial and error, I found I hate root disturbance. But that gave me a worry this year because it's middle crown rotted.
Okay.
And I was like, fuck. And I was like, no. And so treated it careful and it produced 2 shoots off the side. It may divide, it may not.
Yeah.
But I struggle with it because it's got to have periods of dry and periods of this, while everything in here is more kept at the same level with seasonal external influence.
Yeah.
Due to the summer, because we're in the spring, or otherwise known as the European monsoon season.
Yeah.
Or the British monsoon season.
It's been very wet this year, for sure.
And so, yeah, I struggle with some of the arums, but then other varieties of arum, like the hardier ones, I can produce like nothing else, just because they thrive on neglect, like the Sauromatums. But plants I struggle with. In the early days, this is another carnivorous, it would be the pinguiculas, which is little butterworts. They get to about that size round, get bigger varieties or species. And I just couldn't cope with them. I just couldn't. I think I was being too precious with them. It's like, oh, I've got to do this. Oh, I've got to do that. But it's like...
Too much love.
Yeah. Which in some way you kill with kindness.
Yes, yeah.
And it's like overwatering air plants. It can be done. It's not very easy, but it can be done. But it's more through underwatering you kill them.
Yeah.
But my sort of rule of thumb with plants is it's got 2 options. Like it, lump it.
Okay.
And yeah, it might be where I'm a farmer, because all this is just a hobby / future business and the like. But I don't have time to spend hours on one particular genre or class of plants or individual plant.
Yeah.
I've got to do my best, read up, learn about it and go, right, try this, try that, learn from it, it survives, right, note that bit down, doesn't work, go from there.
Yeah, it's all a journey, isn't it? I mean,
Yes.
don't be scared to try things. If it dies, it's a lesson. It's not just a failure.
But also, another thing I try and do is swap with friends. In other words, if your main plant dies, but you know you gave a bit to another friend who's done very well with it, you go, mine's died, can I have a little bit back?
Yes.
Just so I can try it.
Yeah, that's a tactic I use.
Yeah.
All of our neighbours' gardens are having tropical plants pop up, just so that if I lose any of mine.
This isn't guerrilla gardening on a sort of domestic level, was it? But yeah, swap with friends, talk with friends, even if they're not horticulturally minded. They're like, oh, I've got this spider plant. What do I do with it? Do this, do that, and the other. And it just, essentially, not at this level, but it can be a very cheap hobby to have. Just
Yeah.
a spider plant, just something. And it's something you can have in a corner of the house or on a windowsill. And it's a nice hobby to have that not necessarily lightens your life, but it just brings a different aspect to this plane of existence, really.
Yeah, it does. I can definitely agree with that. And I think where you talk about patience and potentially buying something smaller, letting it grow, I think in regards to new hot topic trending plants that come around, if people have patience, they will always come down in price.
Yeah.
You don't have to pay that mad price tag.
There was a new Monstera that's come out, and I think it had a price of like 300,000.
Wow.
And it's, yeah, the leaf fenestrations are the extreme. I think it's called foam or something, green foam.
Okay.
Personally, I think it's ugly. But the price of it is like talking to family friends who are much older than myself who have Monsteras. And during the 60s and 70s, you couldn't give them away.
Yeah.
Especially the variegated ones. They were everywhere, but then they fell out of fashion. And then about 5-6 years ago, they just went mad again.
Yeah. So anyone watching, if you're not familiar with Misfit Plants, Michael's going to be attending quite a few plant fairs in the, sort of the southwest area mostly, isn't it? And selling and listing online as well. So I'll put links to his Instagram profile and other sites in the description of this video, so you can go and have a look at some of these curiosities and see which plants Michael's selling.
So I do, as I said, probably the southwest, but where I live and work on the farm, I'm tied within distance. So predominantly Dorset, Devon border, that sort of areas I do. If you're desperate, you come and talk to me direct, be it in person or online, and just go, how do you grow this? What's this? What's that? And I'm always usually quite happy, might be slow to reply, but just sort of like, oh, that's such and such. And do it like this, do it like that, or...
That's the good thing with plant people. I find everybody is generous with their knowledge and everybody's willing to share.
And even if I don't have a particular plant, mainly on the carnivorous side that someone's looking for, I've got quite a few friends who have their own nurseries, who are very well-established nurseries, and I go to that place, they may have it.
Yeah, supporting everybody. Well, thank you so much for showing us around. Your plant knowledge and the collection of plants that you've got in here, my brain is spinning just hearing so many plant names.
That's default for me. So.
And I know this is only the tip of the iceberg, so hopefully we'll come back later in the year and I'd love to share some of your other plant collections. You've got more arid-loving plants, carnivorous plants, and some giant plants growing in your conservatory, which I think our audience would love to see.
If they're really desperate, then yes.
Thank you, Michael. We'll see you again.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Hopefully you've enjoyed looking around Michael's greenhouse as much as I did. There were so many plants there that I have never seen before, and I wasn't joking when I said my head is spinning. I always find this when I'm going to other gardeners and other growers. There is so much to learn. My brain is just sponging up all of the knowledge. So all of the plant names were in the video, so feel free to watch it again, pause it and write down the name of any plants that you might like to add to your collection. Michael's Instagram account is linked in the description of this video, so if you want to go and follow Misfit Plants, do it, and you're going to see what dates and plant fairs he's attending there. And if you love growing plants like me and like Michael, then join our free gardeners forum at growparadise.social. We're all sharing pictures of our gardens and just supporting the community over there. Hit subscribe to show this channel some support and help us make more of these videos, and I will see you all in the next one. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you for your support.